time for the meet and greet. Meet and greet. It's time for the meet and greet. Meet and greet. Proceed to the meet and greet.
Hello viewers, this is Gargi from Asavari's meeting show 26th with our star speaker, Aaron Spring. So you see that whatever the weather like is, we always have spring every month. So Aaron, welcome to Asavari's meeting show, and please once again introduce yourself.
Sure thing, and thank you for having me. My name's Aaron Spring. I'm the youngest elected official in Westchester County, although I'm here as a private citizen with my own private opinions and views. I am a community servant. I believe strongly in charity and giving back to the community. I have a background in finance and accounting, and I'm currently a candidate for a JD. So I'm here today to discuss politics, to discuss current issues, and we're trying to really push people to have a freedom of exchange and a marketplace of different ideas where we can come up with compromise and solution and not just give into partisan bickering. So I'm happy to be here.
We are going to talk about three very important and crucial issues. The first one is recalling the Jewish Holocaust. The Holocaust, also known as the Shoah, was the genocide of the European Jews during World War II. Between 1941 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its collaborators systematically murdered about 6 million Jews across German-occupied Europe, around 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. The murders were carried out in pogroms and mass shootings by a policy of extermination through labor in concentration camps and in gas chambers and gas vans in German extermination camps. It is indeed tragic to know about the torture, killing, defaming, and depriving the Jews from their basic rights. So being Jewish, how would you explain this? How has USA seen this Holocaust?
So the Holocaust is arguably the largest loss of life in a short period of time that humanity has seen. It is a systemic killing of people based off their religion. Let's also remember that while 6 million Jews were killed, you also had over 500,000 Gypsies, over 1 million Slavic Europeans, anybody from Eastern European descent, whether it's Polish, Czech, Russian, who were seen as undesirable. It was handicapped individuals, gay and lesbian individuals. So this was a genocide that not only focused on the Jewish population, while they were the majority of the victims. We have to look at what the Nazis were doing, which was eliminate anybody who they saw as different and they thought was subhuman. So it was a tragedy. And I think what we need to do is learn from that. I think we have failed to learn from that. If you look today, the Chin Protestant Christians are being slaughtered in Myanmar. Uyghur Muslims are being slaughtered in China. Darfurians are still being killed in the Sudan. So we saw how much evil persisted 80 years ago and how it nearly wiped out, as you said, 2/3 of the European Jewry, wiping out generations. And yet today, we still turn a blind eye. You know, we always say never again whenever we remember the Holocaust. And yet we're allowing this to happen again. And it doesn't matter that it's on a smaller scale. This is genocide, what's going on in China, Myanmar, Sudan. And we need to look back and say, do we really mean never again? Because if we do, we need to intervene and stand up for human rights to stop this genocide from continuing.
Right. So now we are going towards the most touchy and sensitive issue. And it is the issue of Israel versus, or I would rather say, and or Palestine. So what is Israel? Israel is equal to Palestine since Israel is built on Palestine, Philistine. So I would say, Assalamu alaikum. What do you say?
I would say Shalom Aleichem or Aleichem Shalom, back to you.
To Hebrew, right? Okay, that's very good. Okay, that's a good start. So let's talk about it. The Israeli-Philistine conflict is one of the world's most enduring conflicts, which is with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, reaching 54 years of conflict. Various attempts have been made to resolve the conflict as part of the Israeli-Philistine peace process. So far, there has been no solution. So what can be our solution?
So I think this is important to look at historically. We are in tumultuous times in the sense that the older generations of Israel and Palestine historically are more inclined to support a two-party state, or a two-state solution, I should say, whereas the younger, newer generations are all for nothing, or all or nothing. And I mean that with both Palestinians and the Israelis. The younger cohorts are basically saying we want one state. Well, that's not really going to work. So we have to look at what the older generation originally had in mind. And if you look at 2002, I believe it was the Morning Consult poll or the CCPI poll, one of those two, quoted saying 72% of adults in Israel and Palestine, both countries, supported a two-state solution based off the 1949 armistice, which would essentially, in layperson's terms, return your borders to what they were in 1967. And 72% of adults in both countries supported that solution. So you would have two states essentially. Unfortunately, today, just 19 years later, after that poll was conducted, or 20 years later, that support is in the low 20s and low teens, and high teens rather, in part because of the younger generations. I think we need to take a step back historically, and we need to realize that we had a solution. And that solution, again, was supported by more than 70% of adults. Why did we not move on that solution? We're not going to have a Palestine from the river to the sea. We're not going to have an Israel from the river to the sea. You have to give in at some point. And when the overwhelming majority of people, like I said, were willing to return to the 1967 borders, that to me is a perfect solution. I don't really understand why we have not moved on that yet, given its overwhelming support at that time. It's a bit strange to me.
Okay, so let's just discuss it a little bit further in details.
Sure.
Since 1985, the United States has provided nearly $3 billion in annual grants to Israel, which has been the largest recipient of annual American aid from 1976 to 2004 and the largest cumulative recipient of aid. Israel has purchased rockets, drones, combat aircrafts, and has droned on Palestine, sometimes breaking the ceasefire, blaming on Hamas, mainly in Gaza, less on Palestine Liberation Organization or PLO in the West Bank. Whenever peace talks are resumed, there is a tragedy. Example, Rabin's assassination. USA is right now bogged into almost $30 trillion of debts and deficits, and the COVID has taken most lives here in USA. Also, unemployment, foreclosure, bear market, every now and then are seen, along with domestic violence, gun violence, and several other crucial internal issues which have devastated USA. So should USA still support Israel and keep on spending money?
Well, I do believe in the funding of the Iron Dome. I think it's very important. When 4,000 rockets were launched into Israel by Hamas, I think it's important to have a defense system that counters that. I don't condone the killing of civilians by the Israeli government, Palestinian civilians, that is. I don't condone the killing of Israeli civilians by Hamas. And I think we need to take a step back as well. And I said this a few shows ago, and we need to separate the government from the people, the PLO from the Palestinian people, the Israeli government from the Israeli people, and look at ourselves as humans. And I think when we go beyond the government and the rhetoric that the government is spewing, I think on an individual level, the average person would be more for a two-state solution. They need to have their voices heard. So I answer your question. I'm for Iron Dome funding, but I am not for funding simply for the usage of droning or going after civilians. And in Israel's defense, they say we only go after them when rockets are fired into Israel. And despite, I'm Jewish and I'm a big supporter of Israel. Despite that fact, you can't go after civilians either way. It's very important to go after Hamas, and Hamas is using children and civilians as human shields, but there's got to be a better way to go after the people, a small minority of people who are causing violence, and enact justice against them without innocents dying. It's a very tricky slope to navigate. But I do think if we were to come back to the table and get rid of the extremes and actually have people who are willing to make a deal, which I believe lies in the citizenry rather than the government, I think you can have a two-state solution. Again, the all or nothing approach is not going to work. We're not going to have a Palestine from the river to the sea. We're not going to continue to have an Israel from the river to the sea without issues being caused. So there has to be some sort of solution. And historically speaking, let's remember before 1948, the Jews and the Muslims had a great relationship in the Middle East. I mean, we can even go back to the Crusades where Saladin protected the Jews from being slaughtered by Christians. And we had a wonderful protectionist relationship. So all of a sudden in 70 years, the Muslims and Jews are the top enemies of each other. I'm not buying this. I think we have to look at our historical peaceful relationship, take some of these extreme people out of the equation, and push for that 1967 border to be reinstated based off the 1949 armistice. That's the way to go, in my opinion.
Right. Now, there are some issues, I mean, I have some Muslim friends, and I have friends of friends, who are Philistine, and they want to say that, I mean, say, for example, if you go to somebody's house and if you started liking the house and you start staying in that home, and then what happened is that you corner the homeowner only to use the bathrooms and a certain part of the kitchen and not let the homeowner to use all the rooms in spite of the person being a homeowner. So they want to say that, I mean, you guys came from Europe, you acquired the land, and with the help of America, you could easily, I mean, excuse me, I didn't want to say you, it's not you, I'm just saying Israel, because you're representing Israel today and I'm representing Philistine, and that's why we are attired actually kind of the colors of the flags of Israel and Philistine. So our issue is to reach a solution. I mean, the Palestinians, they have been deprived for all these years continuously, and it has been escalated from their basic rights. They cannot move, they cannot, like, do anything without the permission of Israel. Why is it so? I mean, they are the homeowners, man. I mean, if you are coming to stay in my house and you cannot say that, hey, Gargi, you can just use the bathrooms, and you cannot really, go to any room or your study room, or, I mean, if you go to the kitchen, you have to take my permission, apply for the visa, and if your visa is granted, then only you can travel. Even, if I have a common place of my worship, there are so many terms and conditions, there are so many bondages, there are so many rules and regulations. So why are all these terms and conditions, rules, regulations, bondages, why are the Philistines, they are deprived for years?
So I think this goes back to a very deep biblical debate, obviously, and over whose land it is, whether it's the Jews or the Muslims. And if you look at scripture, I'm not going to get into scripture, but if you look at scripture, both claim to have a rightful, both say they have a rightful claim to the land. Now, in Israel, Arabs do have full voting rights and they do have representation in parliament. So I do think it's important to note that there is some effort and there are some ways that democracy can work and Arabs can have a full say in Israeli democracy. Now, I don't condone, again, the violence or attack against civilians, But when Israel was originally formed in 1948, war erupted immediately between its Arab neighbors trying to essentially wipe it out. So Israel, while Palestinians have been trying to survive this whole time, so has Israel. And I think it's important to note that a lot of this, and I hate to point fingers, but a lot of this is the British fault, and this is Britain's fault, because there was no real plan when they decided to give us Israel, and that caused displacement, as you said. It goes back again to the philosophical and biblical argument over who controls Israel. Is it the Jews or is it the Palestinians? And I think instead of getting into the nuances and trying to decide who's right and who's wrong, I think we should again look at historical precedent. And the 1949 armistice and the 1967 borders that were established, or the pre-1967 borders that were established, were generally working. This issue that has taken place over Gaza is not as old as Israel. It's a 50-something-year-old issue that began in the 1967 Six-Day War. But let's look at 1949 to 1967. Those borders seem to work. There was tension, but they seem to have worked. Can we return to that? And I think we can, because all the Gaza issues occurred after the Six-Day War, not before the Six-Day War. So there was the initial invasion. When Israel was originally formed, Israel won that war. And then for 18 years, there was relative peace. So I think we can return to that. And I do agree that we need to stop with these human rights violations on both sides. It's clearly an issue. And it's not solving anything. We can bomb and we can drone and we can torture all we want, both sides, that is. It's not going to do anything. So we look at that 18-year period between 49 and 67, which again, more than 70% of adults in both territories supported in the 2002 polling. This is a no-brainer to me. So I think it's important to take a step back, stop getting into the biblical and philosophical debate over who had this thousands of years ago, because that doesn't help us in 2022. What does help us is trying to get to that state and that solution where everybody's happy, or everybody's at least content, because Israel's not going to be happy unless they have one state. Palestine's not going to be happy unless they have one state. We'll all at least be content. Everybody gets a little bit of something.
Right. Exactly. I agree with you that, in order to reach a peaceful and amicable solution, we need to understand each other. And talking about the oppression, the torture, we started our discussion with the Jewish Holocaust. So the Jewish people, they have seen the worst in their life, that what a Holocaust is, and the innocent civilians have been killed and they were deprived from their basic rights. So it's kind of like the all kinds of violations that the Nazis they did. And so since they know what a Holocaust is, they have been deprived from their basic rights. So why are they repeating history, man? Why are they being even worse than the Nazis on the Philistines? The Palestine has given them land, food, accommodation, shelter, identity. Identity is one of the things, because there was no Israel and the Jewish people were looking for their own Jewish land. Right? So identity is one of the things. The Philistines have given them so much, and in return, what they have got? You tell me, all the deprivations and drones and bombs. So my question is that how can what has happened, we cannot get those days back because there is no time machine. I wish there was a time machine, but unfortunately there is none. So in the future, the future terms and conditions, if you can kindly, you said a little bit, but how we can make it workable, so far, whatever negotiations, treaties, ceasefires have been, it did not work, so we have to make things workable. So what is the remedy?
I think you had a couple good points there. And one is, I think a lot of these talks were orchestrated by the Arab nations around Israel, as well as the United States. I wonder how a meeting would go or a deal would go if it was just the Palestinian leaders and just the Israeli leaders and no outside forces. Because there's no question that the U.S. Is a huge backer of Israel, and there's going to be pressure on the Palestinians from the U.S. And there's no question that the Arab League is huge proponents and supporters of Palestine and is going to be pushing for a Palestinian state at the expense of Israeli land. So I would like to see a sit down between just Israel and Palestine, no outside emissaries, no US, no UN, no Arab League, and let's see if they can work something out without all the noise. Because a lot of the current actions being taken by both sides are reactionary. Somebody fires a drone, then somebody else fires a rocket, right? Well, all that reactionary issue is occurring in part because of the coverage and the actions taken by the Arab League, United States, the UN, and the constant media portrayal. So I think it would be a good start to at least get the two sides in a room together without outside influence and talk. Even if they don't reach anything, if they storm out of the room because nothing's getting done, at least they tried. But I don't think that the global pressure is helping either side in this situation. I think
Right. Because the Arabs
that
that keep on complaining that their sentiments are constantly being hurt. If you remember that when President Trump was our commander-in-chief, he even suggested that instead of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel, right? So only a handful people in Israel, they liked it, they appreciated it, and the same over here, because most people, they didn't like that idea. Right. So, the Arabs, constantly, the land which has given so much, they have given their entire something to you. Not to you. You're representing Israel. Don't take it personally.
no worries, no worries.
I really apologize,
Not at
Yeah,
all.
so it is all about the basic rights. See, in America, there are so many lands, even in Midwest, we can carve out like twice more than Israel and donate it to you and say that this can be the state for the Jewish people and live there happily ever after with your girlfriend or your wife,
I
So,
think you just got the Nobel Prize, the Peace Prize. I'm gonna nominate you. That's a great solution.
so why in Middle East? And then, we are spending so much of money. We are bogged into almost $30 trillion of debts and deficits. And our current commander-in-chief, Mr. Joe Biden, he is saying that more jobs are created. Then why are there so many domestic violence? We just have witnessed what happened in Harlem, and we have lost two gems, two police officers of our city. So, why are there domestic violence? Why are there so much of frustration? Why there are jobs, but people there are not going to their work? COVID is a reason, but, people, they are less paid. There is shortage of staff all over USA because they are not well paid, right? So this is one of the reasons, and small businesses, they're thriving, and so many businesses are shut because of the lack of workforce, I would say. So, we have so much of lack of workforce, and we are sending troops to Israel. We are sending 40,000 troops to Russia. We are spending, in spite of all the debts and deficits, which is on record. So just imagine that what can be an off-record deal, which had happened below the table, and USA had been given more to Israel, which we don't know, because it is not on record, and our people are survived. They are kind of deprived. So why this game of deprivation? Why is it so? What is the answer?
Well, I think the issue is you hit government spending, right? We're doling out billions of dollars, and not just to Israel, but to just about every country. We're paying for things you wouldn't believe if we really wanted to get into the antics of it. Now, what does all this government spending do? We're spending money we don't have, as you said. We're running up deficits. We're printing out money. 20% of our dollars have been printed in the last 2 years, which is very scary. our dollar's worth a lot less. So even when you hear people are paying $21 an hour, 22 an hour, people are like, wow, that's crazy. Wage gains are eaten up by inflation. So it's really not that big of a gain when inflation is eating your costs, or you're eating your gain rather. So I would love to see a drastic cut in foreign aid. And I think it's very possible. And part of that would be exacerbated by a deal between Israel and Palestine, and you would have peace in the Middle East. And again, you said, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We have no idea what went down in a backdoor deal or back room. So getting them to the negotiating table sooner would alleviate some of the defense funds that we have been giving to Israel for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And that would definitely help with controlling some of our spending. It would help with cutting some of our inflation. Wouldn't solve everything, but it would be a start. So I do think that that's also key too. We have to not only look at foreign policy, but foreign policy's effect on domestic economic value. And unfortunately, the sending of troops to Russia, the constant revitalization of the Israeli defense system is costing American taxpayers, and it's costing us money we don't have. We are trying to pour from an empty cup. It's unsustainable. And the sooner we get to a solution, the sooner our economic situation will get better. Anybody who thinks that deficit and inflation is not a real issue, I urge them to look at the gas pump next time they fill up, because it's quite insane. So I think you're right. We can. War is a lot more expensive than peace. That is a fact. So if we can get some of these leaders in two nations of Israel and Palestine to actually come to a solution to alleviate some of those costs. Unfortunately, it's a lot easier said than done, right? But that would be key, is just getting them to a table together. We have to do it now, because the younger generations on both sides are not for a two-state solution. The younger Palestinians, less than 20% of them support a two-state solution. The Israelis, I think it's even lower. So as the older generation dies off and these younger people get in power, it's going to cause more entrenchment and more issues. We have to do this while the elderly and the older generation is still alive and can craft a deal, because I cannot count on the younger generation to push for peace.
Right. This is actually in the top priority list, considering the US debts and deficits. And also, see, if US can save that money, then the Jewish people, those who are here in USA, they will also get benefited, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they will get more jobs, and they will get more grants, they will get more loans. They can get more businesses. And Jewish people are so good in businesses. They're very diligent, hardworking, focused. So these are the things that can happen, if we stop paying. And then our relationship with Middle East and with the Arab world will also enhance. It will become much better, because if you recall that Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, he went to Middle East so many times, but he also could not, bring people on a table. And it was a complete failure and mismanagement, I would say. And we are not doing anything good under President Biden. Although, he actually told us about his dreams. And we are coming to our next topic, which is about a dream. Okay.
Sure.
So it is the Black History Month. And we just had the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. on Monday, January 17th. So it was a national holiday. I would say international holiday, because many people, many countries, actually, those who respect Martin Luther King and his dream, they also had a national holiday in their countries. So Martin Luther King's dream, I have a dream, is a public speech that was delivered by American civil rights activist and Baptist minister Martin Luther King Jr. during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963. In the speech, King called for civil and economic rights and an end to racism. Point to be noted, racism, I mean, coming back to the Holocaust, it was an issue of deprivation and racism, right?
Mhm.
So now, we are talking about Martin Luther King and his dream, and let's talk about him. Delivered over 250,000 civil rights supporters from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The speech was a defining moment of the civil rights movement and among the most iconic speeches in American history. So, what do you think, Aaron? Has King's dream come true? I mean, after the George Floyd thing and many other racial issues, especially on the African Americans, I mean, whose contribution has been tremendous in the history of the United States of America. And if you go to see the army, the military, the Air Force, I mean, all the hard works, the ground force, they are mostly Blacks and Hispanics. So, do you think that Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream has come true?
I think we've made great strides, but I think we are nowhere near where we need to be. Black literacy rates were higher than white literacy rates in the 1950s. Today, they are significantly lower. 45% of young Black men in Chicago, aged 20 to 24, do not have a job, nor are they enrolled in school. We are failing our children. 85% of the homicide victims in this country are Hispanic or Black. We have a new civil rights issue at this time, in my opinion, that is education and violence. And we are doing no good by ignoring these two issues. We have got to get back to basics. We have got to invest more money in literacy. 23% of this country cannot read, and it disproportionately affects inner city African Americans. So we have got to invest more in education, jobs programs. I'm actually doing this on a statewide level with my Stash Trash group. We're becoming a non-for-profit, and we're in the process now. Part of our goal is to hire inner city youth based off socioeconomic status, not necessarily racial status, to give some jobs to the inner city and allow them to take pride in their neighborhood and clean their block. So I think we have made strides. We really have, but we can do much better. And I think that all lies in education. Zip code should not determine where you go to school. Somebody who's born in Hunts Point or Castle Hill should not be forced to go to a failing public school. We have got to do better by offering choice, especially in the inner cities. You don't need it as much in the suburbs, but you need it in the inner cities. Jobs programs, mentorship, and also we have got to promote keeping the family together. Over
Right.
over 80% of African Americans, I believe it's over 50% of Hispanics now, and over 50% of whites are born out of wedlock and are growing up in single parent homes. This is causing a serious economic disadvantage to people who are growing up in two parent homes. The Asian American community, less than 16% of them are born out of wedlock. And there's no coincidence why the Asian American community is the most educated and highest earning community in this country, because they keep the family together. The same with the Jewish American community. But we have got to do better at family planning across all races. We have got to push for two-parent homes, and we have got to do better to support single mothers who, through no fault of their own, are raising children by themselves. So there's a plethora of different issues that we can. That's not the correct term, but there's a multifaceted way that we can dive into this issue, providing youth jobs, pushing for better literacy, pushing for more chance. When all the manufacturing left this country, that took a lot of jobs with it. We need to return the cities to manufacturing hubs, and again, allow people, once they graduate high school at 18, they don't have to go to college. They don't have to go elsewhere. They can get a good trade or good job working in the manufacturing field. So I think we failed Black America by not pushing for more literacy and better educational standards in our inner cities. I think we can fix that by pushing for more choice when it comes to schooling and vouchers, and providing more jobs. Because again, when 45% of Black youth in Chicago, aged 20 to 24, neither have a job nor are they enrolled in school, you create idle hands, and idle hands cause mischief. across all spectrums. We saw it in West Virginia in the 60s, tons of crime occurring because these young white men could not find jobs. In Chicago, it's going the same way. And unfortunately, it's mostly impacting young Black men. So in order to fix that, we have got to invest in the youth. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see gun violence surge. We're going to continue to see drug dealing and overdoses surge. And this is a civil rights issue that we cannot continue to ignore. 360 children last year under the age of 11 shot down and killed, most of whom were Black. This is not okay. So we have strayed too far from MLK's dream. We need to get back to basics, pushing, promoting the family. The community needs to step up. It takes a village to raise a child, and give these kids an opportunity. I'm not blaming the kids. I'm really not. I'm blaming us because we caused this. So I don't think it's as much of a racial issue. I think it's a socioeconomic issue. But unfortunately, it does disproportionately affect Black and Latino constituents and citizens of this country. So we have got to step up. Those with the means need to step up and give a leg up to those who don't have the means across all races and spectrums. We have to help our fellow American.
Right. I mean, you have said a very good thing. I wish, if majority people, especially the ruling party, if they had this kind of mentality, and especially your party, because, the Emancipation Proclamation and Mr. Lincoln's legacy had to be followed in every way and in any way, I would say. So the other question, regarding Black History Month is that there is a common question, please don't mind, please forgive me if I am asking too much. The thing is, about white supremacism, okay? So many colored men, especially men, they think that, all this deprivation, and if somebody it has to go to the top position, they cannot. They are always deprived, and they are always on the ground level. They cannot climb the stairs. They are always discriminated. So why is the white supremacism? I mean, do you think that being a white man, I mean, you are more handsome than a colored man?
No, I actually think I'm less handsome. But I think, so you hit an interesting point in terms of jobs, right? I am a big believer that when it comes to college admissions, job enrollment, race should not be a factor. It should not be listed on employment applications, on college applications. I think it should all be based off merit and qualifications. I am not for this old man's club, just hiring somebody who looks like them, which in this case would be me, right? I need to be qualified. And if
Right.
an African American is applying for the same job as I am, and they have an MBA, I don't have an MBA, they should get the job in finance, right? Based off qualifications. I should not get it just because I checked the box that said I'm a white male. Conversely, people should not get a job just because you want to hire, a Black male. It should be based off qualifications and merit. And I think people need to look at applications, and it really shouldn't be legal, in my opinion, to ask people what race or religion they are when they're applying, or gender. It should be based off, you should look at somebody's resume, look at their cover letter, read their application, and if they wow you, it doesn't matter what color they are. So I think we've spent too much time focusing on race, and I think we need to, again, get back to qualifications, back to merit, and it shouldn't matter who gets the job as long as they're qualified. But we should not look at, Martin Luther King didn't want this. He urged us to look at content of character, not color of people's skin. So we're making all these decisions based off race, and it strays too far from his dream, which is look at qualification, content of character, and how people treat each other. So that's my answer to your question.
Right. Because I have some friends, those who don't want to come on limelight, but I kind of keep on talking with them. And they said that we didn't come on our own. We were brought as slaves. And then, when we had tremendously contributed in the history of this country, and it's your country, it is our country too, but we are constantly deprived, and we cannot go higher, because of discrimination, because of racism, because of the skin color. So I completely agree with you, and we are moving on to the end part of our discussion today. The end part of discussion is kind of really funny, and it is about love compared to the cryptocurrency. And you, being in finance, you can answer, first of all, what is a cryptocurrency and what is the Bitcoin rate right now, and how can you, I'm just reading one line for our viewers. I always read the article before I question you, because not everybody knows everything. So if I just directly ask you a question, people, those who do not know history, or people, those who are not very aware of the situation about the current affairs, they get kind of like confused and lost. So I strongly feel that, let me just read out a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you, so that in my show, at least, people, they will know what we are talking about. So cryptocurrency is a digital payment system that doesn't rely on banks to verify transactions. It's a peer-to-peer system that can enable anyone, anywhere, to send and receive payments. So when you transfer cryptocurrency funds, the transactions are recorded in a public ledger. Cryptocurrency is stored in digital wallets. So tell me, first of all, what is a cryptocurrency?
So it's essentially a type of currency that is not found in a bank. There's no physical dollar and cents, right? It's digitally traded. It's used to buy either goods or services, and it doesn't actually, you don't need a physical bank to deposit it in. As you said, it's these digital wallets, we'll call them. So cryptocurrency is used for a plethora of things. Originally, when it was first used, from what I understand, it was mostly used for drug trafficking. People were paying cartels or some of these groups for heroin and opium and cocaine to flow across the borders. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was the monetary choice used by these traffickers. And then all of a sudden, it became a big thing amongst young people. Between Dogecoin and Bitcoin and all these other different digital currencies, and it's just taken off since then. So people pay for it, use it for a plethora of things. I mean, even Eric Adams is now taking his salary in Bitcoin, the mayor of New York City, and people are saying it's going to overtake physical currency, and I strongly disagree with that. I don't think it will, and I'll get into it after your next question.
Yeah, I mean, you are right that this Bitcoins and stuff, people, they are kind of scared about it, because we have heard about all this cryptocurrency in the Silk Road, I believe.
Yeah.
In the Silk Road. Oh my God, that's scary.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, it's very susceptible to. To theft and fraud. People don't realize how much crypto is stolen, how much these fraudulent scammers get a hold of it. And here's the other thing that nobody wants to talk about: the environmental impacts of cryptocurrency is devastating, absolutely devastating. The Bitcoin alone uses more energy than Ukraine in a year, uses more energy than Norway, uses more energy than Sweden. To do one Bitcoin transaction, they said, uses as much energy in the United States as one consumer uses every month. It's unsustainable. The amount of energy we are using. Industry typically uses energy. Don't get me wrong. The concrete industry uses more energy than the entire nation of India. Bitcoin is on another level, that it's growing. It's using huge amounts of electricity just to mine their coins, and it's creating an environmental disaster, in my opinion. There has got to be a way to push cryptocurrency on renewable energy, because the current usage of our electricity, one crypto, one coin is using as much energy and electricity as a country. That's a serious concern. So I think we also need to take a step back and look at that. Now, is printing money any better? Probably not. You're cutting down all these trees. But it begs the question as to what are the benefits of this if it's having a negative consequence on our planet?
Yeah, and all this kind of, I mean, cybercrime, it happens, right? I mean, people are cheated, and people, they are not told the truth. They think that they're investing a lot of money, but unfortunately not. They're kind of, losing money.
It's uncertain. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it's an issue. I have friends who trade this stuff. I think it's an issue when you have to watch a market because it goes like this all day.
Hmm.
That's an issue. I should
Extremely
use Facebook.
unreliable. Yeah.
I'm not going to use Facebook as an example. I'll use Nvidia or Tesla. You see it go like this, right? Slowly but surely, or the other way, conversely, going down. And I could not check the stock for a day or two, and I'll most likely be okay. In cryptocurrency, again, at 9 o'clock it's like here, 9:01 it's here, 9:02 it's here, 9:03 you got to be crazy to watch that stuff all day. What does that tell you? When stuff is that volatile, something's up. It's not that strong. It's there's a lot of uncertainty around it. Again, there's all this theft and fraud going on, and it's really, in my opinion, a lot of this is manipulation. And we saw that last year with the sale of the GameStop stocks and these AMC stocks. This is all manipulation. So some people are making a few $100, some people are making a few billion. Most people are getting burned at the end of the day. You should always be frightened when you have to check a stock every 3 seconds. That is an issue.
So you want to say that it is much, much worse than day trading?
Absolutely. In my opinion, it's worse than day trading. I mean, what is backing these currencies? What is backing these cryptos? There's now a crypto coin after the phrase "Let's go, Brandon," which is used to make fun of President Biden. There's a coin that's called the Brandon coin. I mean, this is not serious. It is serious rather. These are not serious in places to put your money because of the volatility, the craziness surrounding it. There's all this pop culture going into the mix. I would not put my money in it. I'd rather day trade, and I don't day trade, for the record. And we talked about this. I'm a slow growth,
Yeah,
and I don't day trade, for the record. And we talked about this. I'm a slow growth.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
I also believe in conservative, like a long-term investment. So day trading is very risky and it can make you rich, but it can also make you poor. It's like gambling, I mean, you don't know exactly that if you're making money or not.
I mean,
Anyway,
unless you're involved in illegal transactions, which I don't condone.
oh my God.
What's the point? I don't see any
Yeah.
use to these cryptos. But as you said earlier,
How much is one Bitcoin now? Like $60,000 or something?
yeah, I believe the other day, again, I don't follow it as much because I'm not a crypto investor, but I believe it was around $60,000 the other day, and it fluctuates all the time. At some, there's times where
Yeah, it can be
$5,000.
57. It can, yeah, right. Exactly.
So I would not put my money there. Put your money in a blue chip stock that you're going to get 2 to 5% every year. That's what I do, and I'm very happy. It pays my mortgage.
Yeah. Well, people, I mean, they want to become rich overnight. I mean, people, it's worse than a casino, I would say.
People want success without work, and the only place that work comes before success the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. If you want to be successful, you have to work first. You're not gonna if you think you're gonna get rich overnight off this thing, maybe 1 or 2 people will, but the average person is gonna lose a ton of money. They're not gonna time it right. And again, unless you have all day to check every 3 seconds, this is not a fun investment, and it's not an investment that is going to leave you stress-free. You are going to be stressing nonstop over this. And what happens when the platforms are down? Remember when Robinhood was down at one point because there was too much trading going on? Because of their issue, you could now lose thousands of your dollars because all these people are getting into this volatile stock. I mean, it's insanity. AT&T doesn't do that. Verizon doesn't do that. Facebook stock, other than yesterday, typically does not do that. So, get into these other publicly traded companies that have a good reputation and invest in those, in my opinion, because crypto is it's too volatile. And unless you have $10 million and you want to, gamble 50,000,
just play around. If you are willing to, invest $10 million, you can play cryptocurrency.
Yeah. I will never ever invest in crypto. And some people think I'm crazy, but my portfolio is very happy, and I'm very happy.
Yeah, that should be. So cryptocurrency and love. This is because it's a month of Valentine, so we need to talk about love, Black History Month and Valentine's. So, I mean, true love. We can only find true love in our parents, siblings, children, and maybe a couple of friends. So, true love from a spouse is kind of rare. I mean, people, they are very fortunate, those who have uh, get to witness the silver jubilee or the golden jubilee with their spouse. They are very lucky. And sometimes, they hide their emotion. In Titanic, there was a dialogue that a woman's heart is as deep. It's in fact deeper than an ocean. So everybody's life there is one Jack Dawson. So the other way around, everybody's life there is a Rose. So how do you say that how is true love? I mean, is it like a cryptocurrency, rare and very risky and extremely volatile?
Well, I think it takes a lot of patience, a lot of understanding. You're seeing the divorce rate is so high today because people have one fight and they're willing to just get divorced over that. And I think true love, in my opinion, you need to be able to weather the storms because it's not all, vacations and dinners out and raising your kids. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There could be monetary issues. There could be a death in the family. There could be somebody sick, and this causes a rift. There could be a fight over what you're going to do on Saturday night. There's so much room for conflict. The key is conflict resolution. How do you take two people who are in love, they really are, and get these distractions out of the way? And it all comes down to being able to talk, being able to understand, being able to admit when you're wrong, which is very hard for many men, by the way, and acknowledge that people have feelings, right? And you have to, again, be courteous and respectful of those feelings. One argument over Saturday night dinner or whatever is not grounds for divorce. And these young couples need to start understanding that because the divorce rate needs to come down. We need to keep families together. It's for the good of the children too. If you have children and you're getting to, a fight over something stupid, that hurts the child at the end of the day. So I think we need to do a better job of working things out, conflict resolution, and that will actually make the love a lot stronger in the end. Now, I'm not saying that divorce is necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of situations where it has to happen for the safety of people. Maybe they're not seeing eye to eye anymore, stuff like that. But there's a lot of petty nonsense, I'm going to call it, that can be resolved and can actually make that bond stronger by being able to have good conflict resolution and not just, oh, I'm done, call it quits. Nope, no more. This can't work. No, things can work. You have to be able to listen to understand and not listen to just reply to people.
Right. I mean, that is the main problem because women, that I know of, they kind of blame their spouses and say that he never listens to me.
Yeah,
And then
men are terrible at listening. I don't, I'm sorry to
yeah,
cut you off, but
the
men,
patience level is really less. I mean,
yep,
why don't you guys listen? Do you think that we
I listen.
always, I know you listen. Yes, yes, of course. Yes, yes. Otherwise, you wouldn't have given me time in the Asavari's meeting show. You
Right, right.
listen. But what is the, I mean, main problem that is it the male ego? Or do you guys think that, we don't speak with logic? Most of the time we speak BS.
Well, I think it's important to note that it is in part the male ego. I think men don't like to admit when they're wrong. I think to me,
Yeah.
and not just in a love situation, in any situation, men are stubborn. They don't like to admit when they're wrong. My logic is if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm going to apologize for it. With that being said, I do think, as you said, some women do overreact on certain issues.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, I think the man needs to then say, I believe you're overreacting and here's why. And again, work it out. And if they are overreacting and you can point to a logical approach that shows why they're overreacting or why they're wrong, I think most women will then admit and say, hey, you know what? I was overreacting. I'm wrong here. But if you don't talk it out and you just raise your voice and you start yelling at each other, neither of you are going to budge. But if you at least take a step back and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. What she's right. Here's why she's right. Or conversely, I think you're wrong, and here's why. If you don't take the time to talk it out and the time to listen, then it's just going to escalate things. So I think it's a mix of both, right? Men are stubborn. We know that. Women do sometimes overreact to things. If that's not communicated between the two parties there, it's never going to be solved. If you just keep blaming each other, that's the other thing. You have to have some self-blame. You have to be able to have some responsibility and say, hey, look, I messed up. I didn't hear you, or I didn't listen correctly, and that's why I messed up. And conversely, maybe I didn't communicate that properly, and you misunderstood and you interpreted it differently. If you're not talking to each other or you're not trying to find that solution, it's never going to work. So I think both are to blame. It's not one gender or the other.
I know. Let me just share one funny thing, that my friend shared with me. They were going to a party, a fiesta. And I mean, obviously, women take a little bit extra time to get dressed up because we have to put makeup, do our hair, then, wear like something which suits us. And compared to us, men, in minutes, they can get ready because men don't put makeup. I mean, whatever hair they have, whether bald or they don't hide most of the time their bald patches, but we have to see that,
Right.
how to color our hair, doing our nails and this stuff. And her husband was so upset because they were getting late, and he thought that women are so ugly that we always need to hide our ugliness with makeup, with hairdo, with dress, while men are so gorgeous, so handsome that they don't even need to do it. So the entire car they were like fighting and like what to do. They finally landed to the party, but it was, people could tell that there has been something extremely unpleasant happening between them because both of them were very grumpy and grouchy like that. So these are some of the things that men think that women spend so much of time, money and energy to beautify themselves, whereas men, they don't need, they don't do it. Their kind of mind is always thinking about creativity, and they are very much sporting, and they are very diligent, and they don't waste time like us.
That's a simple solution. I mean, all they had to do there was say, look, you took a long time to get ready. We're now late to the party. Next time, can you, time it? If you take an hour to get ready and we have to leave at 5:30, you need to start getting ready at 4:30. I
Exactly.
think
Ahead of time.
that's an easy, to me, that's an easy solution. And I think wouldn't you want your wife looking as beautiful as possible? I would. So I don't see why you can get mad at that, but I do understand, and not just on a female level. I hate when people are late. I mean, I really do. If I'm picking somebody up and it takes them 30 minutes to come outside, it's really annoying. But I think you take that, like what I just said earlier about sitting down and talking and say, hey, look, I am all for you putting your makeup and your clothes and your hair and getting all nice, but it takes you an hour and a half. You have to acknowledge that. And you need to time it better. And I don't think that's a negative thing to say. And I think if you say that, at least it's out in the open versus, if you just keep letting it go and then you are fighting every time, it's going to keep happening. You have to have that serious conversation and then fix it, because.
Yeah, fix it. That's the thing, there is always a room for repair and fixing things. So you can always patch it up. You can always talk about it, because there is another very funny incident. One of my other friend, she was actually, I mean, calling her husband in a video chat, and her husband visit, put some filter. Why don't you put some filter?
Again, I think it's important to note and talk about how something like that can make somebody feel, right? And again, come to an understanding. A lot of times people make a joke or they make a remark thinking, oh, it's going to be taken lightly, and it's not. So that's another thing. We have to understand where people are coming from. We have to understand how people are feeling. we have to talk about it, because
Yeah,
otherwise,
we really have to repair, and then we women should not be overreacting or like instantly reacting. So we need to understand that, yeah, he also has a logic. I mean, I'm truly being late. I mean, we needed to reach there in so and so time, and I'm taking more than time to beautify myself. I mean, as you said, that if it's 5:30, then she needs to get started at 4:30, even at 3:30, depending on the pace that she gets ready and get dressed up. And the final thing, before you go, I want to hear a closing statement like the usual way you do. And see, our country, we so far has not experienced a woman commander-in-chief. Okay, so there has been always a selection of a man against a woman. So when Hillary Clinton was debating with Mr. Trump, and I really used to like Hillary Clinton's the presidential debates. She did very good in all three of them, and the word used was a nasty woman. You are a nasty woman. That's what he publicly said to her. But in spite of that comment, I mean. He got elected. So, what is your closing? Today, we are mainly talking about racism, sexism, and discrimination. So, what is your closing statement on that?
people again should be elected or hired based off qualification and merit, not because of sex or gender or anything like that. When you look at Hillary Clinton, her biggest fault was the fact that she did not visit Wisconsin once. She did not step foot in a swing state. That's a huge issue, and that's why she lost Wisconsin. Were there some people who did not vote for her because she's a female? I'm sure. Was Donald Trump's comment calling her a nasty woman appropriate? Absolutely not. But I don't think she lost because she was a female. I think she lost because she was a flawed candidate. And again, I ask that people don't vote for somebody. Like, I'm not going to vote for somebody just because they're Jewish. I'm just not going to do it. That doesn't matter to me. I am going to vote for somebody who shares my values, and I support their policies. And I don't care what party they're part of. I'm a Republican, but I'll vote for a Democrat if I like them, and I support their position. So I think we need to stop using identity politics. Stop saying, vote for me because I'm Jewish, or vote for me because I'm white, or vote for me because I'm male. We need to stop, because when you get in there, you're not representing only the Jewish population or the female population or the Black population. You're there to represent all of your constituents. So I ask that on all levels, we judge people by the content of their character, and elect and hire based off content of character, qualifications and merit and values, and not based off some extrinsic characteristic that we cannot control. It's not fair for me to say I'm not voting for somebody because they're not Jewish. For all I know, they could be the biggest ally to the Jewish community, and their stance as a non-Jewish person does not preclude me from voting for them. So I think that's my closing statement: is let's get back to humanity. Characteristics do not matter. Stop judging people based off them, and look at humanity and content of character. So I say it very sternly because I strongly believe in this, and I like to have fun and stuff like that, but I'm very serious here. I strongly believe that we have got to get back to Dr. King's original message, and that's how we're going to get over a lot of this discrimination, is give people a chance based off values, character, and the way they treat you, not based off how they look or appear.
Exactly. That's a very good note. And thank you so much, Aaron Spring, our star speaker.
Thank you.
So I'm going to see you at least once a month, and I'm going to again see you in March. And anytime you want to make a comeback to discuss about any other crucial issues, for example, our next topic of discussion is Russia and United States of America, the muscle power and the probable war on the rights of Ukraine. So this is one of the main point that we are going to talk about in our next topic to whoever it may concern comes in our meeting show. And today's topic of discussion of Israel and Palestine was very fruitful, productive, and I'm pretty sure that my Muslim friends will enjoy this show, and they're looking for some kind of concrete and permanent solution. And you have given a very good solution that how the young generation, particularly, they're looking for some kind of understanding, negotiation, and talk. We need to come, bring two countries on a table, and it will be only between Israel and Palestine, Israel and Philistine, not like USA or UN or any other XYZ country involved. It is the main problem between Israel and Palestine, and they should come on the table and discuss and reach to some solution and respect the ceasefire. So that was a very good solution, and thank you so much. I have no words to say. Thank you for your valuable time that you always give it to Asavari, and we more than appreciate your very kind support.
Thank you. I'm happy to
Salam.
be here. Alaikum shalom. Thank you.
Shukran.
Toda rabah.
Baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, or barefoot on the grass, or listening to our favorite song. I have faith in what I see. Now I know I have met an angel in person, and she looks perfect. I don't deserve this. You look perfect tonight.